now to item 12. We do need to move an extension of time. Councillor Dalton, seconder. Deputy Mayor, all those in favour? Aye. Any opposed? Kia ora, thank you. Item 12, our capital investment program for open space, community asset development, public art, coastal renewals and other regionally funded programs. We got on... It's a significant amount of work gone into this. I might just move this and Councillor Dalton, Councillor Philippine, did you want a second? Sure. Right, so I'm not sure who we are starting with, but if you would like to introduce yourselves one by one in your role, and then I'm going to have a brief presentation, and then there'll be no doubt questions. But we have had the memo, I think, a month ago, and a request for advice or feedback from members of the committee. So I hope that was people contacted you if they had deep dives into some of the items. But we will go from here. Thank you. Just the button on the right there, unless... Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, ko Suzanne Wild, tōku ingoa. I'd just like to make a few introductions of the staff who have been working on these work programs. To my right, I've got Angie Bennett, who can answer questions on the growth work program. So that's the local parks and sports fields development work program. Hayley Walters on my left for public art. Paul Kleinak is here to cover the coastal renewals work program. Unfortunately, Helen Biffin, who pulled together most of the remaining work programs, has just had to go home sick, but Taryn Crew is here to cover off any parks and community facilities questions. Today we are presenting a combined capital works program which amounts to almost $50 million. We are seeking approval for the 2023-24 work programs and in principle approval for years 2024-25 and 25-26. The work programs are largely based on year 3 of the 21-31 LTP and take into account LTP objectives, feedback from community consultation on the annual budget earlier this year, local board views which were gathered from their work program and local board plan workshops throughout the year, and keeping in mind, of course, the continued budget restraint with the aim of providing greater value for money. The combined program comprises component work programs from departments within the Customer and Community Services Directorate and the Infrastructure and Environment Directorate. Increasingly, we are working together to align projects and programs across the directorates, CCOs and central government agencies. There are just 2 points I'd like to clarify with regards to the work programs. I think in the memo it mentioned a total of 41 million. We're now looking at having a work program approved which amounts to 49.85 million. And the difference is really due to the ongoing refinements by the Finance Department of some of the budgets up until mid-July, and also we added in the Coastal Renewals Work Program. The Coastal Renewals Work Program has been provided for information only and needs to be further updated following further understanding of the impact of the January storms. So next slide, please. Oh. Am I operating that? Sorry. So the next slide. Yeah. Thank you. This slide shows the component work programs and their originally funded budget allocations. We have the work program leads for each of these here today to answer any questions. At the top, The largest grouping at 16 million is the Regional Renewals and Development Work Program, and there's a further breakdown of the activity areas within this work program on the next slide. So that's over 3 years, and many of these items are risk-adjusted work programs. Next slide, please. So what I've done is I've identified the largest spend projects in the next 3 slides as highlights of the work that is proposed to be undertaken in 23-24. Firstly, Auckland Botanic Gardens. Key projects are replacing the structure over the main courtyard and upgrading the pest plant biosecurity glasshouse, which is no longer fit for purpose and needs to meet the requirements of the Biosecurity Act. This project is an example of cross-directorate integration where the work is being undertaken by Customer and Community Services Directorate in conjunction with the Infrastructure and Environmental Services Directorate, which is providing $100,000. Pukekawa Auckland Domain. The work program is provided by the Auckland Domain Committee for this committee's approval. Work includes improving drainage of the sports fields and upgrading and extending the path network. Auckland Transport is contributing nearly $1 million to this over the next 2 years. Regional parks. $500,000 has already been set aside to address storm damage to regional park assets. Other key projects are improving the Long Bay water supply system and rebuilding the workshop at Shakespeare Regional Park. Next slide. Local parks and sports field development is funded 75% from development contributions and the balance is from rates. Projects have been prioritised according to where the greatest growth is happening across the region, such as in Franklin, Orewa, and at Tukori, Scott Point. Other growth-related work will upgrade existing parks, such as Eastview Reserve in Glen Innes, David Longi Park in Mangere, and parks in Huapai and Riverhead. Auckland cemeteries. There is increasing need for new booms and memorial walls and to upgrade the crematories as Auckland's population grows. Increasing this budget will need to be considered for the next LTP. This year's program includes building upgrades at Manukau Memorial Gardens. The budget does not include funding for land acquisition of new cemetery land. And then on to slips prevention and remediation. Significant work is required to protect the access to Parnell Baths and the site itself from rockfall. The program may need to be reprioritised once the implications of this year's storm events are better understood. And coastal renewals. The work program includes work on a number of seawalls across the region, as well as storm response work at Snells Beach and on the seawall at Murray's Bay. Pontoons, wharves and bridges are also included in the program. Seismic strengthening. Upgrades are already underway or are due to start this year for a number of libraries, pools and leisure centres, as well as Studio One, Nathan Homestead and the Leys Institute buildings. And finally, public art. The forms near the top of the archway at Waharoa in Aotea Square will require some attention over the next couple of years. An initial 3D laser scan will be completed to create a digital record of the work. Other collaborative work is planned with a group called Circuit to generate new digital moving media artworks in locations around Auckland. Work continues to analyse the effects of the storms earlier this year and what this means in terms of insurance cover and ultimately the costs to the council. Once understood, recommendations will be made and the CapEx work may need to be reprioritised. The General Manager of Parks and Community Facilities and of Resilient Land and Coasts and the Manager of Public Art are seeking delegations to make adjustments to the work programme to minimise delays in the delivery of their work programmes over the year. Next slide. And this slide just picks up some of the local board resolutions. The regional work programme items that are delivered locally and have local board input are local parks and sports fields development, the growth work programme, slips prevention and remediation, and coastal renewals. Local boards generally adopted their CapEx work programmes, with the following boards highlighting areas for more regional funding. However, some local boards made additional resolutions, and these are captured in this slide. They're mostly to do with the growth work programme, so Angie's here to answer any questions about that. Yes, so we've got staff here to answer any questions, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you all. This is looking through this work when before the memo came out, just phenomenal amount of work in quite difficult times, I know, with budget and the storms and everything else you've had to deal with, as well as running shelters and other things that people were volunteering for earlier in the year. Councillor Deputy Mayor Simpson, you have first questions.
Thanks, Suzanne. Huge amount of work. I endorse everything that the Chair said. Huge amount of work, good spread across the region, outstanding, and considering the tough financial situation we're in, I think you've done an outstanding job. I hate to do this, but I just want to ask you a question about Parnell Baths, because I don't think there's been a lot of media around it. Am I right in assuming, looking at this should be sponsored by Spectators, by the way, number 18, is it number 18? Parnell Baths install rockfall protection, because we had that slip. Am I right in saying that Parnell Baths will not be operational this summer? Because it looks as if it's not being fixed until 24-25. Big question, can you get the slip operational, or at least at a place where we can open the Parnell Baths for summer? Do you know the answer to that?
Thank you for the question. So through the Chair, I know the team are working quite closely to see how we can open up the baths, so that's their intent. I'd have to come back with a definitive answer though, but I know that they're at the moment looking at clearing parts of those slips and putting some temporary measures in place to be able to operate the baths, but I'll come back with a definitive.
Excellent. So if you could come back to me, that'd be great. Lovely, thank you. Great job.
Mayor Brown. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, thanks. I've got a few questions here, because, I mean, we do tend to strain at gnats and swallow elephants. There's $50 million here, so it's worth a bit of a thing. With regard to the repairs, how do they sort of compare with the amount of money that perhaps the road stabilisation repairs at AT are spending in our area? And are they, these are basically stuff to do with the recent activity, a lot of this, isn't it? Landslides and...
Maybe you want to be a little more specific. Do you mean what is the quantum as in...
Oh, well, I'll move on. Well, I'll go up to one of them. Just at the start, you said this is for 23-24, and then you mentioned something about the next years as well, which are in here, but they're not in here to be approved now, are they, or are they? Because we've got an LTP coming up, which covers that. So they're just there as a guidance. Is that right?
Through the Chair, this is just normal practice that the following 2 years are approved in principle, and it just enables that, especially for the risk-adjusted projects. There's a little bit of flexibility in the work programme, so that if something stalls this year, something that has been improved in principle can be brought forward and started. But yes, you're right, we are looking at a new LTP starting later this year.
Well, I won't go on too long, but I've got a few things. There's a couple here, like for instance, the Maraetai Beach boating retaining wall, they're going to spend $500,000 out there. Does the Maraetai Beach Boating Club make any effort to pay or to contribute it at all? Or we just cop up $500,000 for someone, for the small few members?
Through the,
Where the Coast Guard operates from and a lot of activities out of there.
Sorry.
through the chair, thank you for your question. What you can see presented in the Coastal Renewals Work Programme is simply renewal and repair of existing assets that council own, no new work. They are all assets under council's ownership and control directly, so the responsibility fits with us. Typically structures adjacent to, within and adjoining Esplanade reserves.
Well, it's very good for the Maraetai Beach Boating Club. And Muriwai Beach Boat Ramp, Rockfall, is that a good place for a boat ramp? Most people launch surf club boats out there.
Through the chair, I think that's a great question. You're speaking to Mototara Road. There is a piece of work adjacent to Mototara Road where the team or council enacted some pretty impressive managed retreat some years ago, and there is a future plan to come back and revisit access to Flat Rock in that location. It's typically used by emergency services to get down onto the beach at that location. You're correct, the surf club and a fishing club that's in that location as well. The future for that access and its durability is questionable. Recent slips have brought down quite a bit of material onto Mototara Road itself at the bottom of Mototara Road by Flat Rock, so we're having a look at the viability of access, the safety of access into the future.
Okay, most of my questions are about seismic, actually. I'm a bit cynical about seismic. You can go to various people, various consultants and get anything from it needs to have $500,000 spent on it, or it's perfectly okay, depending on who you talk to. So do we have somebody looking at some of these ones and saying, really, 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 because some of these are enormous sums of money. The Lees Institute, is it really worthwhile spending $10 million just to stabilise a building which we moved out of because we didn't like using it? Is anyone looking at some $6 million for the Nathan Homestead? And it's a timber building, isn't it? Timber buildings generally perform very well in earthquakes. I mean, brick buildings don't, which is the Studio One. And again, they're spending a lot of money, and you wonder whether or not it is. Someone had stood back and say, is this really sensible use of $10 million? For the sensible use of $6.5 million for a old timber house? Or is seismic being used as an entry to spend a lot of money doing everything else? It's got kitchens and things being done in the Massey Homestead for $600,000. Well, I don't think the kitchen's got any particular seismic input, unless I'm seriously wrong. So I'm kind of looking through this in detail and thinking, holy moly, Studio One, $3.5 million. The library in St Heliers, which is not a particularly high building or anything, $4.5 million. The Remuera Library, which I know quite well, and stood there for a hell of a long time. I just want to know, are there any recent buildings needing upgrading? Because if they're recent buildings, then they shouldn't have got a permit, because they've been looking at it for quite 20, 30 years in some ways. Our building codes had seismic requirements for a hell of a long time. So are you absolutely sure that this monstrous sum of money is fully justified? Because I've got grave doubts about the seismic stuff. And so I'm not ready to say that's a hell of a good investment without somebody looking back independently and saying, really, 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 on that one. So I don't know quite what the answer to that is. You probably haven't thought about that. But certainly $6.5 million to fix a wooden building strikes me as a complete waste of money. And then I went into the local arts and sports development. I only look at the big things, but we've got 10 million for Kawaria Metro Park West. I presume at Hibiscus and Bays. I presume that's really good value. There's 14 million for one here at in Upper Harbour. Now, Upper Harbour, wherever that is, North Harbour has got a stadium which is we're probably going to pull down next year because no one goes there and it's such a white elephant. Is it sensible to be spending $14 million in an area where we've got an empty stadium that never breaks even and is more than likely we're going to lump it and flog the land and use that to reinvest in stadiums all over the district?
But maybe,
So I'm just asking these kind of questions. I should have probably sent something in before about them, but it's...
Mia, maybe just on the, do we have a specific answer on the seismic? How, maybe just generally how those assets are chosen and what are the options and how are the prices come to? Maybe just the high level on the seismic, the upgrading of our current asset.
Through the chair. So with regards to the seismic projects, a lot of these projects are local board assets that we work quite closely with them in terms of working through the design and what options we have around the retention of those buildings. Many of those buildings are heritage, so they aren't recent buildings. They are buildings that are quite aged, and the way we've selected those are based on, as we've gone through the building consent and code process, those facilities are the ones that have been identified as the highest risk. The seismic component that you see in the program is the portion of funding that is provided to that project, and quite often the local boards actually top up that funding through their renewals to do any other renewal work as part of that building. So as an example, Lees Institute is one that is currently being discussed with the Waitemata local board, and they are looking at options of even optimising other assets to invest more in Lees Institute. So there is an extra, if there are any other additional renewals that don't just relate to seismic, those generally come from the local board renewal program.
Well, I sort of think I understood that, but if you look at the Nathan Homestead, it's got 5.374 million of seismic. There's 193,000 1 year, 784 must be expecting an earthquake in 24-25 because they're spending 5.5 million that year. I just want to know that this, we just haven't wandered off to the nearest big spending consultant and been sucked in like we seem to often get sucked in. But I find spending $6.5 million on an old timber building for seismic is very hard to believe. I can understand Studio One, which I know quite well, which is a brick thing that will fall down at the drop of a hat. So if you do want to keep that, you probably have to spend something to top it up. But how can I feel confident that we're just not going to suddenly put our hands up and spend 14.2 million in next year and 5 the next year on seismic stuff and know that we've got good value? Because I don't feel comfortable about that. I mean, who are the seismic advisors?
Through the chair, I don't have the, and we do work through a panel of consultants who help us with that seismic work. So we do work with people who are experienced in terms of what the engineering requirements are for those buildings. With respect to some of the examples, so the funding is generally phased through the program so that it allows us to complete that investigation and design work before we procure or commit to any of the actual construction work. So as part of developing the 3-year work program, each year we would bring back the program and refine if there was a change in those values. So that's the reason we generally have the funding also phased out, which starts off smaller in the first year and then grows into the year where we're expecting the construction to happen. Unfortunately, I don't have details on Nathan Homestead, but I'm happy to come back with an answer.
Well, I'd like to know that you've gone to 2 or 3 engineering firms and seen, because I can tell you, mate, that they'll give you differences in price by a factor of 20 probably, not 20%, 20 times. Whereas if you're doing ordinary engineering, a coastal or a retaining wall, most of them would be more or less the same. But it depends on whether they've set themselves up to do that or not. Well, I'm just going to ask you to actually think seriously about that before we approve that part of it.
And just on the, maybe to the, I assume you were talking about Scott Point before, Mayor. The Upper Harbour is the Upper Harbour Local Board, but the project there is growth funded because of, does someone want to maybe, yeah, so it's a growth funded project because of Hobsonville Point, and the area around there has a significant amount of people already and not a lot of community assets.
Through the chair, that's absolutely correct. So that will be catering for the population increase within the Hobsonville area, Hobsonville Point, Whenuapai, all of the increased housing and
Well,
development around that area. So it is our first sustainable sports park that is being developed in Auckland, and it is there it basically is to demolish the infrastructure that was already there, and reinstatement, site preparation, and construction of sports fields, car parks, toilet facilities, playgrounds. It's the full Monty.
Okay, well that's good, but the North Harbour Stadium was built for a whole lot for the growth, and it never came. And we're going to close it probably, and all the sports that use it are going to be quite happy to go to another park over there. Sure, we've already talked to them about that. I just want to get it right.
Point of
It's a
order.
big chunk.
We have a stadiums working group. I'm really concerned about conversations that are saying we're going to close a stadium.
Well,
I
no.
think that's way premature, and I just don't want that being the front page of the Herald tomorrow. No offence, Simon.
Well, that's probably fair to say, but we are looking seriously at the fact that we have more stadiums than we can fill.
Sure, but we haven't identified one we're going to close.
All
Can we
right,
just be
but
clear about that?
we're just about to spend $14 million in the same area as one that we can't fill.
So,
That's a valid point to ask.
Mayor Brown, I think the issue, and thank you, Councillor Ferry, the issue is on stadiums. There has been no conversations with committee about any decisions around things like stadiums, especially closing them. So I think Councillor Ferry is right to question what that's about. The other issue
Fair
is
enough.
that Albany is quite some distance away from the Hobsonville area.
Okay.
And with development contributions, these projects have been locked in for a long time on the expectation. And in fact, I don't believe we would legally be able to move this money from this project to a different one. So it's quite a different.
Okay, well, that's a good answer. I was asking the question and the ladies answered it. And I think a map might have helped a bit, because we could see that we're dotted evenly around the district, which is my other worry. In fact, everybody worries about that. But that's the end of my questions, I think.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think definitely we can bring, especially the seismic-related stuff, to a meeting with the Mayor's office to go over how that process comes from. I think probably in the future, I think I would have preferred a workshop, but the memo did come through and we did send out twice for questions, and maybe I should have pushed that further with individual, especially with the Mayor's office. So that is probably more on me when that memo came out early a month ago. So apologies for that. I have a number of questions now. Councillor Dalton, Deputy Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for your report, and it's great to see so much investment coming in to across the region. You mentioned in your report, or when you were speaking, that there's no money budgeted for cemetery land. I do recall that we were talking about acquisitions of cemetery land, and we actually discussed where it was going to be in the future. I was just wondering where that's at, and in what year might we be looking at acquisition for more cemetery land? Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you for the question, Councillor Dalton. So, sorry, that's just a clarification. The cemetery land isn't in this report. So we do have in the LTP, we've got, I think it's around $30 million worth of acquisition set aside for cemeteries. And there was a paper a couple of years ago now, I think, where we were looking to progress the Northwest Cemetery acquisition. So there is discussions underway on that one at the moment, and then funding further out for the southern area.
Perfect. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipina.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on that particular point, I'm glad you said this is not in this particular one around the cemeteries, because I know where the putia came from, which was from Manuko. But look, I also know that it, as you rightly said, is going to northwest because that's where the priority was at the time. So thank you for that. In regards to some of the monies that's in the report, and in particular seismic, can you confirm yes or no that some of the work that needs to be put in, or the putia that needs to be put in there, is as a result of legislative changes that we need to do this work? Can I just confirm whether that is correct?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. So, yes, it is, and I'm not the expert in this space, so I won't pretend to be. But we do have, under the building code, we've got legislative requirements to be able to carry out that seismic assessment. And then when those assessments are completed, we've got a time period to complete the works. It is quite a long time period, and that's why we've signalled within the report that as we have completed more and more of those assessments across our portfolio of assets, that we'll consider what additional funding is required as part of the discussion of the LTP, whether that's through reprioritisation or additional funding. So that work is underway, and a number of those detailed seismic assessments is the program of work, the OPEX program of work that has continued over the last couple of years.
Taryn, can I also just get a comment in regards to that we have a procurement policy that is in place in regards to getting people whose expertise is seismic strengthening, but there is a procurement policy that we need to adhere to in regards to that, contractors?
Yes, so through the Chair, yes, we do. We follow the Council's procurement policy with regards to all of this work, and particularly in the seismic space. As I mentioned, we've got the panel of experts that we use, and we also, when it comes to construction work, generally a lot of this work is open tenders because of the nature and scale of the work.
Chair, just two more. The document that the mail was going through, how many people have a look in regards to the work and the completion of that document, the spreadsheet I'm talking about? I mean, how many people would be involved in checking, double checking, and to ensure? I mean, look, if it's 100, please tell me it's 100. If it's not less, I just want to know that there's some accountability, but also people looking at it to make sure that it is correct when it gets to here.
I'll go ahead and answer on behalf of the team. So through the Chair, there is quite a bit of work that's done, and across the program, and just notwithstanding that the program's not just parks and community facilities, but we've got coastal and public arts as well. But with regards to the program with parks and community facilities in particular, there is quite a lot of engagement with stakeholders and business owners around. So we work really closely with regional park rangers to make sure that they have input into the program, that we are focusing on the highest priorities and across any of these projects. As we've noted, a number of these projects also then sit within the local board space, so we give them visibility of those projects as well to make sure that there is also good oversight, I suppose, in terms of the priority ranking, and that the team are pulling that together accurately.
Thank you, Chair. My last one, and that's in regards to in our agenda, and it's number 30 in there. I can understand, and it's the prioritisation of the work program, and that's the cost of remedying storm damage to parks. So that particular 30, my question is, at what stage would you now return to either talk with the Chair and Deputy Chair or Megan in regards to further reprioritisation of current and proposed projects is therefore likely? Because, you know, I mean, I'm assuming at the stage you end up finding out, what you'll end up doing is going through to the lead director and obviously the Chair and Deputy Chair to say, hey, look, here's here's something that we need to address, and that's reprioritisation. Is that what happens around process, please?
Kia ora, through the chair. So as mentioned with the storm remediation stuff, and I think I covered it in the storm update we did maybe last month, there is quite a bit of work that is still being done around investigation and assessment of which of those assets do we actually retire, which of the ones do we actually replace. There's also quite a lot of work being done in, where we've got slips that are impacting those assets. That's taking time, just given the number that is across the region, as well as working through with our insurance providers around what will be covered. So I'd say that there's quite a bit of work. That's why we've put some provision within the work program to be able to progress some urgent works. But we've certainly got to continue to, once we've got a better understanding of the stormworks requirements, to be able to bring that back and look at the reprioritisation in the program.
Thank you to you and your team. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman.
Apologies, Chair. Just trying my technology. Look, it's difficult. I don't think you can probably answer on attachment F, line 6, seismic strengthening Nathan Homestead. I do want to say, Chair, I apologise that I haven't been able to get these 2 inquiries that I have through sooner. But can I just ask, and just to respond to the Mayor, Nathan Homestead is not simply a timber building, it's timber, brick and masonry, and it's a pretty important community asset, and I do support it. Can I ask the time frame for the completion of the physical works? You can get it all completed, or you're fairly confident that you can get all of that physical works completed in the time frame as set down? I know that the homestead will have to be it'll have to be temporarily closed to undertake this work during that period. I just don't want it to lag on for longer than what you forecast. So are you able to answer that?
Through the chair, I'll do my best, Councillor Newman. So in developing the work program, the work program leads have worked with the project managers and any stakeholders in terms of looking at that timing. As I mentioned, with some of the projects, if they are still at that kind of design and investigation stage, some of that timing may need to be refined. I don't unfortunately have the details specifically of Nathan Homestead, but I could come back to you on that. Oh, no, somebody might have it.
Through the chair, looking at the project and the project manager's input to the project, it's looking like the predominant work will be done next financial year in year 25, and looking at completion by the end of that financial year.
Okay, look, that's very helpful. I think, there was a bit of unhelpful commentary around the future of Nathan Homestead through the annual plan. It's good to have a credible response from the officers, whom I do support. I thank the officers for their work. And my other question, Chair, is attachment G, Local Parks and Sports Development, line 29, Twin Peaks Rise, development of the new neighbourhood park. Look, I support the funding, but the timing of this, it refers to meet the needs of new and future residents. I've been door knocking up there quite extensively as recently as the other week, and the level of housing development through there is way beyond new and future. It's current, and now many of those houses are at least 4 or 5 years old. So is there any opportunity to move that forward? I know that this is significantly funded through regional growth, which is good. The contributions should pay for this, but the timing of this, you're talking about physical works not happening until 25, 26 and 26, 27. I think that should be brought into the next financial year.
And through the chair, assessment on the allocations in future years, so not this current financial year, will be taken into account when establishing and proposing the next LTP. so there is potentially room for movement. I do want to highlight that a lot of projects that were previously prioritised in past 3-year rolling growth work programs that were impacted by the emergency budget financial constraints have been reinstated. So they have been literally put on hold and now going to be picked up again and reprioritised on the basis of deliverability. And again, we'll be working with the teams on the basis of our submission for the LTP.
Okay, thank you. And last question, if I may, Chair. The officers have really credible answers here, but also at attachment G, line 30, Hengaia Park, the development of the new neighbourhood park. Part of the work associated with this is of course to enable the pedestrian crossing, which is a condition of the consent. That particular part of the project has to align with the other works that Auckland Transport needs to complete from Hengaia Park down to Auckland Road. Do you have any line of sight to where Auckland Transport are at in terms of their share of the work to enable the other complementary changes that will need to occur on Hengaia Road to align with what you've achieved at the park? If not, I'll ask them directly.
Through the Chair, I'm afraid I don't have that information for you on hand.
Okay, Chair, I'll go to AT. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Member Henare, online.
Kia ora, Chief. Look, just a question. What sort of engagement or partnership with mana whenua and or mātāwaka was there during the design and development of the programs? Was there any?
Through the Chair, all EU engagement is done on a project-by-project basis, depending on the area and what mana whenua is associated with that area. So that is all taken and led by the project manager directly.
So we don't know which projects would have had a partnership deal being done or engagement.
So all projects are engaged with their local iwi on a project-by-project basis, which is led by the project manager. So depending on what stage the projects are in the delivery phase, whether they would have had mana whenua engagement as yet or that's pending, still yet to be done. Completely.
So is there a report card on that engagement for each of the projects somewhere that we can see?
Just through the chair, there's not a report card per se, but we do hold, so across, just acknowledging that different programs have different engagement methods, but across many of the parks and community facilities programs, we hold a monthly mana whenua forum, and so at those forums is when the projects are ready to at a stage where we're engaging with mana whenua and iwi, then at that point through the forums is where we engage.
So how many have they had so far?
I'm not sure of that number, I'd have to come back. But all of the projects are presented through the mana whenua forum.
Presented, but not engagement or partnership. They're just like a consultation, sort of, here we are, this is what we're doing, sort of exercise.
So through the Chair, each of the local board work programs, if you like, are presented to their local iwi and they are invited to partner with them, and they then come back and let us know which projects they're interested in, to what level they're interested in, to partnering with and collaborating with design and so forth, artworks and things like that. And then once that's received, that's identified, provided to the project manager, and then they understand the level of engagement that the iwi or mana whenua want to participate with.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Member Henare. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officers. My question is following on from the resolution that came from the Mongakiki Tamaki Local Board about Maybury Reserve, and also along the same lines as Councillor Newman, when he was asking if their project can be brought forward. I'm asking the same thing for Maybury, because that's a whole bundle, and I see the local board want part of that bundle relating to the playground. to be brought forward. And I understand why, because we haven't been without a playground in that park for 5 years now when it was removed. It's 50% Pacific, 23% Māori in that community. So I hear a lot of arguments around the table about equity. I'm jealous of our cousins in Manukau with their Hayman Park. So I really want to see how we can make this playground happen faster in Glen Innes, please.
Through the chair. So Maybury Development is, currently the concept plan is in development, and there are quite a few stakeholders involved in the development of this particular site. You've got Auckland Transport, Kainga Ora, Tamaki Regeneration Company, Water Care and Healthy Waters, as well as parks and community facilities. So while the concept plan is not expected to be completed until the end of financial year, we've prioritised the implementation for the project to fund directly on from that within the FY26 financial year. So there'll be no pause, if you like. As soon as the concept plan is completed, adopted by the local board, implementation works can commence straight away. But unfortunately, we are working in a situation where there are a lot of stakeholders involved, a lot of other underground infrastructure and so forth that does need to be delivered in conjunction with our work. So we are having to work in that collaborative space. But we are getting it done as fast as we can. We are very aware that that is a local board priority.
So, can I ask one more? So if the concept plan is finished sooner, can they go ahead with the playground even though that part of the funding hasn't been brought forward yet? Because it's set for 26, 27.
25, 26.
25, 26.
So the concept plan at the moment has just come back from iwi's. And iwi have done the consultation and just returned that for further review, and then it will go out for further public consultation, and it is not due to be completed until the end of next financial year, I've been advised by the project manager, and therefore the implementation or physical works funding has been allocated for 26 to be able to implement that concept plan immediately.
So if it's done by end of next year, could we look at bringing forward it for 24, 25 then?
If it was done by the end of this year,
then
we could look at bringing that investigation and design phase forward, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Am I able to get that in writing, please, so I can give reassurance to the local board?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor, and apologies, Councillor. I know you asked the questions about this project early this morning, and I was going to give you the first question, and I didn't, so apologies about that. Councillor Williamson, and then Councillor Turner after him.
I'm going to try and wait until we can have discussion. Mine's more around the whole process here than a specific question.
And you sure you don't want to clarify any concerns about the process or comments about the process, or you just want to comment?
Well, it's more to do with just grossly uncomfortable with a portfolio having an envelope of some money, but no financial scrutiny over any of the detail of the line items in here. I agree with the Mayor. I think there are things there that needed some rigour and some fiscal scrutiny rather than just portfolio type base. And I see things like here it says it was agreed as a budget envelope approved in the 2023-24 budget on 8th of June. I'm sorry, I haven't got the documents that I can find to show that we got that level of detail. I know we debated a lot about what cuts we were making, and I know a lot we debated about debt and so on. But to know there was just an envelope somewhere of 49.8 million, and somehow it's now been broken down into this category, and on a day where there's so many other items on an agenda, I mean, this just seems to be the worst possible format for good rigour about financial scrutiny of, is this the right money, is it the proper spending, is there poor quality spending in here and so on. I'm sorry, I'm going to be voting against this whole thing just simply because I feel grossly uncomfortable with the process.
Thank you, Councillor, and I guess this is more a political conversation maybe, or maybe Megan can comment, but I think that we do approve and did approve these budgets, whether it is our role to be looking at contracts or, we could be here for a very long time going through that process. But The other thing is, I will say that we put out there very clearly to all members of this committee and the Mayor's office and staff to request for questions and information a month ago, and asked for feedback, and nothing came back to me. So I wanted to have a workshop, but because no queries came forward, I assumed there wasn't a lot of interest and didn't want to waste staff time and energy. But I will ensure that there is a workshop on this post this meeting to get into that nitty gritty. But I guess the issue is that I didn't feel there was any queries that when we put it out to everyone, to us, those specific
Mr.
questions.
Chair, my concern was more about the process overall, not just this particular committee or any other committee, but I'm not come from a background where portfolio decisions can be taken exempt from the blowtorch of scrutiny of the fiscal implications, the quality of the spend. It's got in here phrases that I feel very uncomfortable about. If this can't be delivered within it, we'll move it into the following year. If this is done earlier, we'll bring something forward or whatever. Those are just not things, in my view, that should be in a document like this. So it's nothing to do with questions. I'm sorry. I know I'm alone. You don't expect this to be held up by anybody else. I just think this is an appalling process for deciding on final budget numbers.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor, and we'll definitely get more information to all members of the committee on this process, and I think it's a good discussion to have through the long-term plan around how we can do a different process, if that's what is wanted. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Mayor made me breathe, so I've calmed down. There's nothing more I can add. I agree with Councillor Williamson. I agree with the Mayor. The spreadsheet the Mayor's holding is the holy grail in how we get our council back on track financially. There is plenty of investment, lots of investment. We're just not getting for it what we're spending. A half-baked mechanic like me can build a mansion out of $6 million. How it goes to a little, it's just ridiculous. And so I'm really looking forward. We all have those spreadsheets, correct? Yes. I'm just trying to get back to them. I thought I'd seen them, but my 675-page agenda won't download quick enough for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking forward to digging deep into this stuff.
Kia ora. Thank you. I will ask the staff to move back from the table. We will go into debate. Yes. Claudia wants to clarify some of maybe the comments.
So kia ora, and sorry to step in so late in this process, but I've been really listening actively to the comments around process and the queries around cost effectiveness. So perhaps what we can do is, I can understand that this is a process that might not be familiar to everyone. It is a process that we've followed before in terms of taking items in a portfolio up to committee to get committee endorsement. A change in that process is something that I'm not recommending we do right here today, because we've been through this process on a number of occasions. But what we're very happy to do, of course, is take any follow-up questions that you might have and go through the level of detail around the process and all of the steps that we follow to get us here in the first place. So I would welcome to meet with people. My team would welcome to meet with people if anyone would like to have a separate session to discuss specific items that got us to these steps. If that's something that people would like to do, they're welcome to contact me or Taryn. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Claudia. Councillor Fletcher, do you have a question?
Before we start commentary, I just want to, notwithstanding the reservations that people might have about process, I think that the officers responded as carefully and truthfully as they could, and I just want to acknowledge them and not see them drawn into the wider debate over process.
Thank you. I definitely agree with you there, Councillor Fletcher. Are there any people who would like to speak to this, members of the committee? Sorry. Myself, mover, and Deputy Chair, Councillor Dalton, my brain at 5 p.m, will second. Councillor Filipaina had a comment. Thank you.
At least I know that Councillor Baker will keep me in time. Chair, look, I just want to, again, like everybody else has, is to applaud the staff. And if people are unsure around the process, well then, as Claudia has just said, the director, go and see them. Go and see them, find out what the process is, but also, more importantly, have a look at the old decisions that were made to get us to this point. That is what you need to do as councillors. So, and also either His Worship, the Mayor, or even his staff, have a look as to why we've got to this point. Because the staff have followed the recommendations that have come not only from this committee that you and Councillor Dalton chair, but also from the previous term. So that's my ask is just go and have a talk with Director Weiss. I just want to end up, and I'm going to mention all the spreadsheet that people have commented on. And on behalf of the Manukau Ward, thank you for the work and the monies that have gone in there as a result of previous decisions made. So thank you for that. There was no lobbying from the councillors in regards to this, because the process is what you will do and what you have done to get us to this point. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to lobby and end up saying, hey, look, you should do this. The best thing is what Councillor Newman, but more importantly what Councillor Bartley did, was that if the plans get completed prior, is there an opportunity? And the staff said, yes, there is. There is an opportunity once the concept plans. To the public art team, and I think it's number 70 of the agenda that I was reading, and I just wanted to acknowledge the public art team in regards to the work that you had. And it's Toi Whitaki, the Arts and Culture Strategic Action Plan, which was set from previous councils. But that is still relevant for us, and this is why the public art work is so important to our community. So, Chair, definitely going to support this. And I just look forward to the councillors that need to contact Dr. Weiss to do that, to get the reason why we're here. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Next speaker, Councillor Williamson.
I think I've said everything already. I don't want to repeat it.
No worries, thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers? Deputy Chair, sorry.
I had my hand up.
Oh, apologies, Sharon. Councillor Dalton will be first, and then you'll get your speaking turn after that.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, thanks to the officers for all of the work that they've done. And I guess if I reflect back from when I was the chair of the local board for a number of years, the projects that came to us, they came to us in detail. And the local board goes through them, and they get the costings, and they're part of that whole process. There's a real diligence around that. We push back if we think it's too much, because they do get pretty expensive, and we ask lots of questions. So I believe there's rigour in this. Also, what was really helpful is when we did introduce the RAP. So we could move between 1 and 3 years, because our projects weren't getting delivered. It was really difficult to get over the line. But when you had a project that was held up, you could push it back and bring another one forward, which meant we got things delivered for our community, all within the same funding envelope. The RAP works really well. We should be able to push back if there is a constraint in getting a project delivered, and we should be able to deliver another one in its place. Please Google Nathan Homestead. Go to the Auckland Council site of Nathan Homestead and page through all of those photos, and you will see not a little house. This was such a valuable asset. As you know, I don't need to keep telling you, we are asset poor in Manurewa. This was a gift from the Nathan family to Manukau City Council, and it is used by so many people in our community for various things. It deserves to be earthquake strengthened, and when I first heard about it years ago, I was the same as you, Mayor. I thought, seriously? What is it with this earthquake strengthening? Like, does this have to apply to absolutely every building? Because it was legislation. But here we are. I mean, it's been waiting years because it's such a long lead time to get this earthquake strengthening done. But it needs to be done. And it should be done for that building. So I guess in terms of going down into the contracts and procurement and the cost of whether renewing playgrounds, like I always had a thing about the renewal of playgrounds, because we'd get an asset plan for all of our playgrounds, and some of them were recommended to be renewed where they really didn't look like they needed to be renewed. And so that's another place where local boards can push back and say, you know what, we're not going to renew that one, but we're going to do a better renewal on this one over here that really needs it. So I like the way that the projects are working now. I like the way that local board can input. I do think we need to have some rigour to test out that we are getting value for money. I mean, I see value for money when I have a look at the assets that we do build, but maybe there are cheaper people around that can do it. I don't know, because you look at those regional providers that we have, and where it is swings and roundabouts for some of the projects that we're doing. So thanks again to the staff. I will be supporting this. We already voted the budget on it. To not support this means local boards don't get their projects done. It means all our assets continue not to be renewed, and we stall the whole process to go and have another workshop to talk about costings. So I'm supporting this one and agree with you. Perhaps we go through the process with a little bit more rigour next time. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, Deputy Chair, thank you. Councillor Stewart, your speaking turn.
Thank you. I was just going to say that I agree with Councillor Williamson, but I thought that the reason the Mayor wanted to have an expenditure and control committee was to try and make sure we spend wisely and we find some savings. And often a lot of things come onto agenda items such as this when perhaps it probably might have been better to have gone through expenditure control and maybe discuss with whoever, maybe a local board that's wanting some money or something like that or whatever. But I don't think we're doing it the right way, so I won't be supporting it as well. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Any last comment? No. I'll just briefly comment. Just want to acknowledge everything that's been said today. I will say that this has happened a number of times now at this committee and other committees where we have had a significant amount of information come to committee members, radio silence on questions, and then a lot of questions and complaints come through during the committee time. So although I take on board what has happened and the comments here, we did put it all out and there was nothing came back to our staff. But in the future, we are going to look at a new way of doing this to ensure full information. But I will say, to go through line by line, contract by contract, and us will take a lot of staff time, a lot of money, a lot of time for all of us to go over those contracts. There is obviously $49 million of fantastic projects here, and we have a lot, as our local boards would tell us, a lot to renew, a lot in our regional parks, and a lot of priorities that everyone is throwing at us all the time. And a lot of this, and most of this, has come from our previous decisions and has to end up somewhere. So I think it's important to have those conversations through the long-term plan, but I will ask those questions. Maybe I'll resend memos a few times to make sure there are no questions, because if there were more, I would have pushed harder for a workshop to find the time, to find the staff to all come around and have those conversations. But because that didn't come, I thought we were pretty okay on that. So I will put that through now. Yes, Mayor?
Well, I accept what you say, and I think that I'm not questioning public art or that external bits and pieces. But I don't know that a highly technical thing as seismic repairs should end up in a Parks Committee. And I'd like to consider whether it would be able to take F out of it and have that referred to somewhere else. It's not affecting art, it's not affecting development of parks, it's not affecting anything like that there, but I really feel uncomfortable in my background about approving millions of dollars on something or other that I'm not sure even those people, our excellent staff, are able to make a view on that themselves. It's highly complex. And so I'd like to move that F gets dropped out of this, but I don't know if anyone would be prepared to second that. Second.
Mayor, are you removing an amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to move that F gets set aside and reported back later.
Hang on a second. Councillor Philippines.
Chair, I didn't want to call a point of order. The point of order is this, and it's around the process. I thought as the mover of this recommendation, you were closing the debate.
That is...
And as a result of that,
no.
I thought if you were closing the debate because you are the mover, and I thought that was the situation at the moment. As a result of that, the debate has finished. Therefore, then, your Chair, that the recommendation should be put. I believe that what the Mayor is possibly asking, that can be still addressed later, but it will be, and he has the right, as all the councillors around this table, to vote against this recommendation. I'll leave that point of order with you and also with Sandra around the closing of this particular item as the mover.
Kia ora, Councillor.
Thank you.
I did ask if there were any other speakers before I closed, but I did use my chair's discretion to allow the Mayor to speak. If he is moving an amendment, I'll have to know what that amendment is.
Just to make sure, if I wasn't talking about the small F Tautapa, the general parks, I was talking about attachment F, which is the seismic spend only. And I only want to reserve that for a month so we get some secondary input into it. Now, if I'm thinking if I've upset the point of orders, well, that might be the case. But there's $25 million worth of expenditure here of a particular type that none of you people will be absolutely sure we've got a really clear fix on whether that is a good spend. Not questioning about the parks and reserves. We've got plenty of skills on that. I accept the staff skill set and pricing, all those things.
This is fine. We are in debate, so if you're moving an amendment, this has been clarified, sent to your office. This is the responsibility of this committee because it is the renewal of community assets. So do you have a amendment to move or... No, I've already agreed that we will definitely have a conversation on seismic strengthening and the work that is done and to go through in detail.
Well, I mean, that might work as well. If we have a discussion on seismic in the next month, then we might come back with a different figure. So it can either be done that way or we just leave it out and come back with that for a month. But this is a particularly technical, tricky thing, and there's $25 million in this over the next 3 years of something or other, which I've seen lots and lots of very poor spend on that. For instance, there's a building I own in South Auckland that has had one engineer said it's 100% compliable, and another engineer went there and said it's only 30% compliable. 2 engineers. I took it back to the council's reviews and they agreed it was 100%. I didn't have to spend a penny. But somebody nearly pushed me into a spend which was not worth it for the value of the building. So it's pretty scary, and that's money that I wouldn't have been able to invest elsewhere in South Auckland.
So I will definitely I have already committed and the staff have committed to have a specific briefing after this. I guess my concern is that we are governance, not operations, and how deeply are we going to go into this? And if we don't trust the staff advice, how much are we going to pay more consultants, which we've all already opposed spending? So I guess we're going around in circles here. We're in, is there an amendment? Deputy Mayor.
So in the interest of trying to help this, so what we've got is a couple of people questioning seismic work, right? I can give an example. For example, the Winter Gardens had a major seismic upgrade. It came in under budget, or just on, I think. Even through COVID, everything else worked really well. Got another number of seismic projects that are funded over multiple years, right? So my question is here, if this goes through in its entire form, right, let's let it go because these are the decisions that they're pretty much, a lot of them are multi-year things. Let it go, and then would it be better if we had a seismic conversation? We used examples where we have had to do the work, how successful that's been, and explain to people how we've got to the budget for the projects that we've approved. If that's a good outcome, Your Worship, I don't think it needs an amendment. I think we can just put this through and commit, don't have to resolve, but commit to having a workshop with some tangible examples, including all those in this here, that actually show that it's got to a point. If, as a result of that workshop, something goes wrong or we don't agree with it, well, we can address that when it happens. But the seismic upgrades that kind of I know off the top of my head have seemed to be reasonable and have come in not over budget, whatever, they've worked well. So if that's an option, Your Worship, I would guide you to that place, if possible.
Well, I'll take a compromise out of whatever this is, but I have raised the issue. The thing is that saying that it came in budget still doesn't let you know whether it was worth spending the money in the first place. Because the thing is, if you repair a park or a building, the public can see that it's repaired and parked, and they love it. But if you spend some money on seismic upgrade, no one knows whether that was a good investment or not a good investment.
For a heritage building, that's quite a good idea.
Well, yeah, but it might have been quite a safe heritage. I've got another heritage building with the same thing happen. We had someone saying spend a lot of money, another one said you don't have to.
That's fine. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think that is what Taryn committed to earlier when we asked, but I think with your support to further the ability to bring something back if we have huge concerns about it, I will just have to work with the Mayor's office and yourself to ensure what the focus is of such a briefing or workshop, because it could be, we could go for days. So I just want to make sure that we give clear advice to what exactly, and we'll work with the Mayor's office and yourself to get exactly the points. Is it the why? Is it the how? Is it the why aren't we selling these buildings instead of doing them up? What are those decisions that were made earlier to get us to where we are? And I think there is a long paper trail of that, but I'm happy to work with yourself at the Mayor's office and then have the briefing up on level 26. Right, we are closing the debate now. Thank you, Mayor, for those questions. Yeah, we've already. No, I finished the debate and then I allowed the Mayor to speak and then we went again. Apologies, sorry, Councillor. I thought you gave up sorry.
I don't give up quite so easily. I think it raises a broader issue, and I would like us to reflect on the fact that it's only a week ago we did a review of our committees and the delegations and so on. So I'm glad that we're not going to go to a vote, because I would have found it difficult insofar as we had agreed that the delegations to your committee have remained the same. There was no changes to them. So I just wonder whether there is further work to be done. My own view is that there is duplication in some areas of expenditure and accountability, and the same applies within CCOs. And I just wonder whether the Mayor's office could actually do a little bit of further work on what it is they intend from the delegations to these committees, because otherwise, if we've wasted half an hour here today on things that could have been shepherded by the staff through to the appropriate committee that might have actually avoided the concerns expressed by the Mayor. And I think it's been a little bit unfair to the staff who have been diligently answering our many questions here. So I don't feel happy about the delegations with this committee. I think there's some others that could change, and it could just make the functionality of this committee a little better, and probably is true of other committees.
Right. All those in favour? Aye. Any opposed?
No, and I'm calling a division.
I think the vote has already been completed, so...
I'm voting no, and I'm calling a division.
Yeah, he did.
I said I would be voting no, and I want a division.
Point of order, a division has to be called before we vote. That's the issue, councillor.
I said it when I was speaking.
I don't think you did.
I don't believe...
I said it is my intention to vote against this.
Yeah, I know,
Yes, but
and
it's
you can
different from
note
calling a
your
division.
vote against. We just can't call a division after the vote has been complete. But I can record your vote against and Councillor Stewart's vote against, unless you...
I want a division.
Okay, I'll just check the standing orders on calling a division after we've voted. There isn't it is odd practice to call a division after we've voted, but I'm happy to do it, so Sandra's calling a division.
Thank you, members. You're voting for a division on clauses A to K in regard to item 12. Chair Hills.
In favour, of course.
IMSB member Ashby. Councillor Baker.
For.
Councillor Bartley.
For.
Mayor Brown. Deputy Chair Dalton.
For.
Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Ferry.
For.
Councillor Filipina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher. IMSB member Hinare.
Was very quiet.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Yes.
Councillor Lee's left. Councillor Leone.
For.
Councillor Newman.
Yes.
Councillor Sayers.
No.
Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart.
No.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
Yes.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Williamson.
Against.
Okay, so that's carried.
Thank you. It was 16 votes to 5 for significant investment into our communities. Thank you. Right, item 13. Sorry to keep you waiting.